History has shown many cases in which innocent, peaceful people have been mistreated and conquered, whether it is the taking over of an underdeveloped culture or the cleansing of an ethnicity. The Native Americans were robbed of their land as their people were killed off. Countless people suffered through the horrors of the Holocaust. The situation today in Tibet combines exploitation of land, oppression, and ethnic cleansing. Tibet is a country situated on the Tibetan Plateau at the center of Asia. The Tibetan Plateau has an average elevation of over 5,000 meters. This area has the highest elevation of any spot on Earth and is commonly nicknamed the rooftop of the world. The land of Tibet is extremely beautiful, with sparkling rivers and majestic mountains. Tibet has a long history, with its first king dating back to the year 602. The first Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of Tibet, ruled from 1391 to 1474, and since then there have been 14 Dalai Lamas. Since the year 670, Tibet has had problems with China. Like its surrounding nations, Tibet has faced problems with disputes over borders and ownership of land. Tibet has always maintained a distinct cultural, linguistic, religious, and ethnic identity. The Tibetan language is quite different from Chinese. It is not only spoken in Tibet, but also in Bhutan, Nepal, and parts of northern India. Today there are 4 main dialects of the Tibetan language. Religion is very important in the lives of the Tibetan people. The main religion of Tibet is Tibetan Buddhism, which, like the language, is broken up into 4 divisions. Tibetan Buddhism strongly includes belief in reincarnation, and for this reason, Tibetans treat all life, whether it is people or the simple worms in the ground, with respect. Before the Chinese occupation of Tibet, education was based on religious beliefs, and the government leaders were Buddhist monks. Famous symbols of Tibetan Buddhism are prayer flags. The flags have mantras on them, and it is believed that the power of the mantras will be spread as the flags wave in the wind. These colorful flags can be found almost anywhere throughout the country, ranging from houses and monasteries to mountain passes. Tibetans have a unique race and their own ethnic identity. They share no common territory, language, laws, or race with the Chinese, and their religious beliefs are only somewhat similar. Tibet was invaded by the Chinese on March 10, 1950. In October of 1950, 40,000 Chinese troops invaded the country, with the goals of giving Tibet a so-called peaceful liberation. After Tibetan officials tried to negotiate with the Chinese government proposed a 17-point agreement defining the measures for their peaceful liberation of Tibet. The agreement was not for the benefit of Tibet. It was really China's way of stating the plans they had to manipulate Tibet. For example, the first point of the agreement states that the Tibetan people are to return to the People's Republic of China, which the agreement refers to as the motherland. Historically, Tibet was never a part of China. The agreement also states that the Tibetan people should unite against their own forces. In 1959, there was an enormous uprising of Tibetan resistance. This resulted in severe violence from the Chinese military. During this period of uprising, about 430,000 Tibetans were killed. Another 100,000 Tibetans crossed highly dangerous mountain passes and fled to India, along with the Dalai Lama. In Tibet, only certain crops, such as barley, can be grown because of the high altitude. In the early 1960s, thousands of Tibetans died of famine because the Chinese government forced the Tibetans to undergo agricultural modernization, which consisted of planting crops that would not survive the altitude. The Tibetan people have suffered great oppression since the invasion of their country. People have been beaten and tortured, and important parts of Tibetan culture and records of history have been destroyed. The Potala Palace, which was once the palace of the Dalai Lama, has been turned into a museum for tourists. The Chinese government stole the many works of Tibetan art and literary works from the Potala. The environment of Tibet has been exploited. Tibet has suffered massive deforestation, and much of its natural resources have been taken away to China. Dams have been built, and many of Tibet's sparkling lakes have been destroyed in the process. Between 1950 and 1984, about 260,000 Tibetans have been killed in labor camps. The ethnic culture of Tibet is slowly being wiped away. Tibetan women have been sterilized and forced to have abortions. The Chinese government has changed the official language of Tibet from Tibetan to Chinese. Tibetan secondary school students are taught all classes in Chinese, and some are sent away to China for their education. The Chinese have recently started educating young Tibetans about the historical past of their country, but any reference to an independent Tibet is omitted. The Dalai Lama is currently in exile in Dharamsala, India. Many Tibetan exiles live here as well, and it is the home of the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives. The Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, founded by the 14th Dalai Lama, is considered to be one of the most important libraries of Tibetan works in the world. The Dalai Lama calls his approach to the situation in Tibet the middle way. According to the Dalai Lama, it is called the middle way because the presence of China in Tibet is certainly damaging, but on the other hand, it is believed that China has the ability to modernize Tibet, which is something every Tibetan wants. The situation in Tibet is one that cannot be solved by the Tibetan people alone, and the oppression will continue if no action is taken. Although the world knows that the situation in Tibet is a great humanitarian crisis, it is almost understandable why the nations of the world are not interfering with China. China has very important relationships with many, many countries, including the United States, and the whole world could be negatively affected if these relationships were ever broken. The Dalai Lama has hope for the future of his country. He has said that there is an increase of global awareness of Tibet, and that the awareness is very good. He said that if the United States leads the way with their support, then the rest of the world will follow.